Automation is not just about building workflows alone. It is also about sharing with your team members, collaboration, teamwork, and securely sharing the credentials that you are using in your workflows with others. Welcome to my course on AI automation powered by n8n. In the last section of this course, today we are going to start learning about how to share your workflows, manage user access, securely distribute credentials, and leverage the n8n APIs to programmatically manage it. So let's get started with the first part of the lesson, which is all about user access and management. In n8n, you can assign three types of roles to user. First one is the owner, who has full access and can manage everything that is there in your n8n workspace. Only one owner is allowed per instance. Second role is the admin user role, who can control other users, control other workflows and credentials, but they cannot modify the owner role. Finally, third role is the member role, which is more like a standard user who can manage their own workflows but does not have any kind of global control over your n8n instance. But why this role-based access is important for you? Well, everybody in your organization or whoever is building workflows in your n8n workspace should not have the same amount of access, right? And by access, I mean that every user should not be able to access all the credentials which are there. They should only be able to access the credentials that they are working on. Secondly, they should not have access to other workflows that they don't have any interest in or they don't have anything to do with. Hence, in order to protect the sensitive data, API keys or business critical workflows, you need this kind of role-based access. Secondly, you want to prevent any kind of accidental changes in your business workflows by unauthorized users. And finally, you want to ensure only relevant team members can edit specific workflows or execute them. An example could be, imagine you are running a marketing automation. You want your team to use the workflows but not modify the API keys or credentials. With role-based access, you can grant them the permissions to execute the workflows but restrict them from modifying API keys or critical settings. With role-based access, you can maintain control over security while allowing collaboration at the same time. Now let's look at how the workflow sharing works in n8n. By default, workflows are private only. That means the creator has access to them only. These owners or creators must explicitly share workflows with teammates for further collaboration. So this kind of sharing allows multiple users to collaborate on a single workflow so that you can expedite the workflow development in a faster manner. Now let's get to the screen share and see all this in action. Alright, I'm logged into the cloud instance of my n8n workspace and you can see this is the capstone project that we did in the section 7 of this course, where we created the entire workflow to automate the faceless YouTube channel so that you can start your own. If you have not watched that video, go back and check that out, the entire project, so that you can learn so much about n8n. But over here, we are here to talk about now sharing of the workflows, more collaboration features. So how do you get access to all that? Well, first of all, you can click on this username where your username is there. These three ellipses are there. You go to the settings over here. So in the left panel, you see this users tab over here. You click on it and you can add some users to your workspace. And as you can see, there are three total users in my instance currently. First one is the owner, which is of course my user. And you can also see that this owner tab, there is nothing to change. And as I told you, there is only one owner allowed per instance. Now, if you look at the other two users, I have this drop down over here which says member. So both of them are members. They do not have the admin rights. So these have a role of member. But if I click on this drop down, you can see this admin is disabled over here because I am on the basic plan of n8n instance. I'm not allowed to add more than one admin users. That's why you see the admin user disabled over here. If you need in your instance more than one admin users, what you will have to do is you will have to upgrade your instance. So if I click on it, you will have to upgrade the subscription so that you can get more admin roles. So you can see that currently the admin roles is allowed only in the pro plan in the starter plan, only one admin and owner are allowed. That's why I'm not able to assign a different role to any other users, but I don't need it. Maybe you need it. You may have like a bigger organization, or you may be running an AI automation agency where you might have multiple people working as admins in your organization. So that's where you would need to go into the pro plan. But how do you add these users? Well, you see this invite button at the top. You click on this, you start adding the email addresses, and like I said, I can only add member role users over here, so that's why I see only member, but you can also invite some users to become admin as well. You provide their email addresses, they will get an email, they will have to accept the invite. Once they accept the invite, they will start showing up over here by the login and credentials that they will create. They will be able to log in into your n8n workspace, which is more like for me GenAI unplugged.app.n8n.cloud. So that is how you add users to it. Once you have added users to it, how do you share your workflows? Let me go back to the same workflow that we had. So this is a pretty big and complex workflow that I worked upon. Let's suppose that I wanted someone to collaborate with me to work on some of the aspects, maybe this aspect of the workflow. How do I do that? Well, what you can do is at the top, you see that this share button is there. You click on this share, then you will see this pop up over here, and you can click on the users that have accepted the invite to join your n8n cloud instance. These two are the users currently in my n8n workspace. So as soon as I clicked on it, you can see that this name has appeared, and the role for this particular person is the editor, that he or she can edit the workflow that you have shared with them. Similarly, I can add other users as well. Now both the users in my n8n workspace has access to this particular workflow. Once I click save, then only they will get the access, otherwise they won't. So if I click on save, now they have access to this workflow. Now again, I can click on this share. If I want to remove the access, I can click on this delete icon over here and then click on save. So now I have removed the access of this particular workflow for those users. Now once you start adding users to your n8n workspace, once you start sharing workflows with them, well, it does not necessarily mean that all the credentials that are being used or that you have created for your instance as an owner or an admin user are also shared with those users. So basically, they will be only able to meaningfully contribute to your workflows or collaborate on them only if you are able to share the credentials as well with them. Otherwise, most of the workflows that would require some sort of credentials to integrate with other APIs or services or apps are not going to work. And why it could be useful? Well, credentials can be shared across various users such as API keys or auth tokens, but they are never exposed even when you share with them. Users can use these credentials in the workflows, but they cannot view or extract the API keys that you have created. Only the owner and admin users can revoke the credential access from other users. If you are still confused, let me take you to an example. Well, a developer is working on a workflow that you are building, and you do not want your Google Sheets API key to be exposed to them. You only hire those developers to write some pieces of code that you are not familiar with or you are not comfortable writing because you work in no code world. So in this scenario, you can just share the credentials with those users whom you have invited as developers to join your n8n workspace. They will be able to write code and integrate Google Sheets or other services that they are required to integrate with your workflow without them seeing any kind of sensitive information or API keys or any other type of credentials from your workspace. So credential sharing balances the security and collaboration. It lets the team work collaboratively without exposing other sensitive information. Now let's go to the screen and see how you can share your credentials. Now let me zoom in a bit to the screen and let's see what kind of credentials that I had. So for example, let's open this one. So for generating voiceovers, I had already created 11 labs authorization over here. As you can see, I have selected this 11 auth app, and I also have Pi API authorization as well over here. So if I want some other team members to use these two credentials, what I can do is I can go back to my canvas. Now go to the personal space over here, And as you can see at the top, there are three tabs. First one is the workflow, the second one is the credential, and third one is the execution. So if I click on the credentials tab, you will be able to see all the credentials that I have created so far. And at the bottom over here, you see that this Pi API auth credential is available. This 11 labs auth is available. So what I can do is I can click on this, and then I can go to this sharing, and over here I can select the project or the users. So if I select the project, everybody in that project gets the access to it in the workflow that they are building or working upon. Otherwise, if they are going to use or contribute to the workflow where this particular credential is being used, they will not be able to execute the workflow because the access to this particular credential is restricted. They would have to create their own credentials and then they would be able to work on them. But this is not you want. You have the 11 labs API key configured, you have put in some money, you have also bought the subscription. You do not want every developer to buy that kind of subscription, right? You want to share your organization subscription with all the developers or all the workflow builders in your team. That's why you would have to share all these common credentials that you are creating at the organization level, so that every individual is not creating their own credentials. And once I select this particular person, he has now the access to this 11 labs auth API. He or she can use this particular credential in any of the workflows, including the workflows that I have shared with them. Do not forget to click on this save in order to provide the access. If you are not clicking on this save, then the user is not going to get the access. So you must click on this save button in order to save your changes. Now similarly, if I want to revoke the access of this particular user from this particular credential, I can just click on this delete and click on save. Now the access has been revoked for that particular user on this particular credential. Now last thing in this first lesson of this last section of this course, I wanted to show you how you can control the automation. What I mean by control the automation? Well, n8n provides you the complete access to all the features that n8n instance exposes via API. That means you can programmatically control the workflows that you are building. You can programmatically control the other features of an n8n instance. You can programmatically get access to the other features such as executions, all workflows, or a particular workflow. That means it will allow you to create, update, delete, or even activate your workflows programmatically via n8n APIs. But what could be a real world or practical implementation of automating the automation? Well, let's say you want some of your workflows only to run in business hours 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So what you can do is you can write another workflow that programmatically controls the activation and deactivation of all these workflows at 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. respectively. This way you can prevent the unnecessary executions to happen for that particular workflow. That means you are saving money at the end of the day, because remember, every plan in n8n charges you based on the number of executions of the workflows that are happening. And if the workflow execution is happening outside your business hours that you do not want to happen, well, you are wasting money, or you are wasting the number of runs for the workflows that are allotted to your workspace for that particular month. So by programmatically managing your workflows, you are able to not just make workflows further smarter, but efficient as well. Now let's get to the screen share and see how all this works in action. Alright, in order to programmatically control your n8n workspace, what you have to do is you go to the settings again. So you click on your user profile icon over here, this three ellipses, you click on this settings. And then over here you can see that there is this tab just below the users that we saw earlier in the lesson. You see this n8n API tab. You click on this in the panel and you can see that control n8n programmatically using n8n API. So if I click on it, you would see the documentation of the public REST API of n8n that you can use to programmatically perform many types of the same tasks that you can do in GUI of n8n workspace. So you can read about this documentation and see what else you can control or you can access through this API. But I'll go back. Now I'm going to click on this create an API key. Here you will provide the name of the API key. I can say something like internal API key. Then you can set the expiration of this API key. You can have 7 days, 30 days, 60, 90 custom and no expiration as well, that the API key never expires. Again, it is not recommended to have an API key with no expiration. You should always have some sort of expiration in any type of API keys that you create, and you should be able to rotate the credentials just as a security practice out there, so that you are not exposing these API keys indefinitely. Next part is where you select the scopes, which is nothing but more like permissions that you are allocating to this particular API key that you are going to create. So right now I do not have the ability to modify the API key scope because I am on the basic or starter plan. You need to be on the pro plan or other advanced plan in order to control or modify the scope, but I have access to everything. So if I click on this, you can see that you can perform user actions, you can perform source control actions, you can generate a security audit, you have all the options for project like create, update, delete, list, you have variable level control, you have tag level control, and then comes the workflow level control where you can create, read, update, delete, list, move, even activate and deactivate as I explained in the example. And then comes the execution logs over here. So you can also fetch the execution logs and see if there are any errors and maybe perform some actions programmatically somewhere else. And then finally you can create, move or delete credentials as well. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to click on save. So the API key has been created. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to say done. So now this n8n API key has been created that we can utilize to programmatically control our n8n instance. Let's go and make some API calls using a workflow itself. So for that I have created a new workflow called section 8 lesson 1, and I'm going to first add a trigger over here. So that's trigger manually, and what we are going to do is we are going to call the n8n API using HTTP request node, and I'm going to show you another way of making API calls to n8n instance. But first let me show you how to use the HTTP node so that you can follow the same procedure in order to control your n8n workspace from somewhere else, maybe some other application which is out there, maybe some piece of code that you are writing somewhere else in your organization, in your system, wherever you want to deploy that piece of code. So this HTTP node implementation will help you code in other programming languages as well, because it is just as good as making a REST API call. So let's search the HTTP request node. So let's start by calling a very basic method in order to fetch the user list of all the users that are there. So for that we are going to use the method as get. In the URL, how you are going to form it is the URL of your instance, the n8n instance that you have. So you are going to copy this. So you can see that in my case, my n8n instance is at GenAI unplugged.app.n8n.cloud. So I'm going to copy this over here. I'm going to paste it. Then I'm going to continuously form this URL. So if we go to the documentation and let me open this authenticate, how to authenticate. So over here, if I scroll down a bit, you can see both the variants of n8n. One is the self-hosted n8n instance, the other one is the n8n cloud. So I'm using n8n cloud. That's why I copied this part, which is your cloud instance URL. If you are using a self-hosted n8n instance, you would need this particular part over here. After that, what we have to do is we have to copy this API/v. Version right now is v1. So we are going to write v1 over here. So I'm going to copy this API and paste it. So it's my instance URL /API/v and the version is 1. So I'm going to append 1. Then I'm going to add a slash, and that's where you get the access to all the APIs which are there. And the first one that we are going to make use of is, if I click on this endpoint reference, so it will open up the endpoint reference documentation of it, and I'm going to call the user. So you can see the users is simply users. So you can just copy this users and you can go back and you can write this users over here. Now comes the authentication part. So for the authentication, we created an API key. So what I'm going to do is in the authentication, I'm going to say generic credential type. And if we go back to the n8n documentation and click on this authenticate over here, so you saw that in the authenticate part, it is asking us to send a header with the name of x-n8n-api-key. That's where the API key will go. So one way of doing it is that I can basically go ahead and click this send headers, and this is going to open it up. I'm going to copy paste over here and I'm going to paste the API key over here, but I'm not going to do this. I'm going to show you a more secure way of doing it so that you can share these credentials with other team members as well without exposing the API key. So for that, what we are going to do, like I said, I selected this generic credential type in the authentication. In the auth type, we are going to select the header auth. And in the header auth, as you can see, I have few created over here. I'm going to create a new credential and I'm going to say the name as x-n8n-api-key. In the value, I pasted the key that we generated. Now let's rename this to as n8n API auth. Let's save it. So credentials are saved. Now for the sharing part, you can click over here and you can share with other users in your n8n instance. I do not want to do that. I'll just click and close. Now this header authentication is set up. One more thing that you have to do is you need to select this send headers, and in this send headers, I have to go back to this authentication over here, and in this I'll just say accept. So name is accept, and I'm going to copy this application/JSON. I'm going to paste it over here, and now let's execute this step. And you can see that all the users which are there in my n8n instance have been outputted in this data field. If I go to the JSON, you can see that 3 users are there, my own user and the other 2 member users that were there. So we are able to fetch the users from our n8n instance. Similarly, let's try to fetch all the workflows that we have which are active basically. So for that, I'll go back to the canvas. I'll just copy this node, I'll paste it again, and let's open this. And in the URL only, we are just going to make some changes. So we are going to go to the API references. I'm going to go down a bit. So you can see over here, retrieve all workflows. The method is get and the endpoint is workflow. So I'm going to come back over here, just say workflows. Now, since we just need the active one, so for the query parameter, I'm going to turn on active equals to true. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to send the query parameters. First name will be active and the value will be true. Let's execute this step. So you can see that the data has been returned, and one of the workflow that is active right now is Ladakh decoded new orders notification, and I probably should have another one. So if I keep on scrolling down, it's a bit big node or big response that we have received. So over here, the second one starts. So you can see the name Facebook integration. So that's the second workflow that is active right now. You can go over this API reference and see what all APIs are available and what all you can control. So this was the first way of programmatically controlling your n8n instance. However, to make your job easy, especially through n8n workflows, what n8n has done is it has also provided a node. So if I click on this and search for n8n API, so you would see that n8n has a node itself, handles events and perform actions on your n8n instance. So if I click on it, you can see all these actions are available, which are also available using HTTP requests or REST API calls. So you can use this node as well instead of making an HTTP request call. I showed the HTTP method so that you can write your own piece of code in some other applications which are controlling your n8n instance. But if you want to just control n8n workflows or some part of n8n's through the n8n instance, through the workflows itself, better make use of this n8n node that is available, providing all the actions that you can make. And if there is an action that is not available, you can always go back and make use of HTTP request node. So let's select this get many execution. Let's select the credential. So for that, we have to create a new credential. Here it is just asking the API key. So I'm going to just paste this. I'm going to save this. Oops, I think I did not mention the base URL. So I have to mention the base URL over here. As you can see, API/v1 is also there. So that I have to append. So let's copy this. Let's paste it. API/v1. Now let's try to save it. So you can see connection tested successfully. Now I'm going to click this. So this time we want to retrieve the executions which have happened in our n8n instance. Get many is true. Return all is false. Limit we are going to just say 5. And let's execute this. So 5 of the execution log IDs or executions that has happened have been returned successfully by this node. So that brings us to the end of this lesson. Now that you know how to collaborate with others for developing workflows, how to securely and safely share the credentials without exposing any kind of sensitive data or API keys, as well as how to control your n8n workspace using APIs, using some programmatic language. You are ready to efficiently scale your workflows like a pro. In the next lesson of this last section 8 of this course, I'm going to talk about some enterprise grade features that n8n provides. If you are looking for those features, next lesson is for you, where I will be covering how to save execution data for easier debugging, how to use source control and versioning for workflows, how to use custom variables for dynamic workflow management, how you can secure sensitive data with external secret management, and finally real-time monitoring with log streaming. So if you are interested in knowing about these features and what it can do and what value it brings, next lesson is for you, and I'll see you over there.